Hi guys, welcome back to my channel Lush Gardener. So in this video I'm going to be talking about a very frequently, or I would say a frequently discussed question: why are my succulents dying? Now guys, there could be couple of factors related with this. The one that tends to top the list is overwatering. Now a lot of people tend to mistake overwatering with watering every day. A lot of people think that if you're going to water your succulent, the succulent will die, and this is where I would say a lot of people have this phobia when they tend to grow succulents, that if they're going to water the succulent will immediately die. Now guys, it has nothing to do with the frequency of watering, but everything is related with the soil. At the end of the day, everything comes down to the soil. If your soil is of not the right proportion, if it tends to get compact, it will damage the succulent. It can even be fatal to your succulent. A soil mix that tends to retain a lot of moisture, does not dry out or stays moist for a prolonged period of time, can also kill your succulent. Using of excessive amount of fertilizers in your succulents can also kill your succulents. Apart from that, environment, climate, and the last being experience. A lot of times we do not have much experience. Probably you have experience about one particular variety of succulent, you buy another succulent and you do not have much idea about it. So a lot of times it's also related with experience in growing a particular variety. Not all of the varieties have the same care requirements. Some require more light, some require less light. Some would prefer a slightly colder environment, some would prefer slightly warmer environment, some would prefer dry environment, some would prefer a more humid environment, like for example our haworthias. So there is a vast, I would say succulents are a very vast subject. It's not only about taking a succulent and putting it into the soil and that's all about it. There is so much to learn about succulents, and a lot of people don't even venture so much. All they know is that you have to put the succulent out in the sun, give them that soil mix, and that's all about it. But there are a lot of things, small details also matter a lot in keeping your succulents healthy. So as I said, overwatering tends to top the list when it comes to killing your succulents. That's because a lot of people have a soil mix that tends to retain a lot of moisture, especially if the soil is organic rich. Always remember guys, anything that is organic in the soil, be it peat moss or cocoa peat or anything that is organic, that tends to, even for that matter leaf mold or compost as well, it tends to retain moisture. Apart from it being very nutrient, it also tends to retain a lot of moisture, hence it doesn't help the soil dry faster. And apart from that, your watering also changes as per the season. You cannot have the same schedule of watering throughout the year. It tends to change because one, our succulents also tend to go dormant and non-dormant depending upon what season it is. So your soil, your nutrients level, everything plays a very important role. It's not that you just make a mix and you just give it to your succulent and that's all about it and your succulent is going to do quite well. What I have always noticed is a lot of people tend to already make a pre-mixed soil with fertilizers and they give it to the succulent. They don't even know whether a succulent is dormant in that particular season or not, and they just dump in a lot of fertilizers. That is also going to harm your succulent. The most frequent thing what I have seen is, and that is the most worst thing that someone can use for their succulent, is mustard cake. Now guys, mustard cake fertilizer is the most heaty kind of a fertilizer, if I have to say. It tends to generate a lot of heat, especially if it is not given in the right quantity. Not only succulents, even your foliage plants also can get burnt. They will get yellow, or the brown tips or the leaves will start to turn yellow, because mustard cake is highly nutrient. It is a very heaty kind of a fertilizer. As soon as you put it into the soil, it tends to generate a lot of heat, and you can imagine what it's going to do to your succulent root. So you have to be extremely careful. Apart from that, any fertilizer that has a very high amount of nitrogen will also burn your succulent root, so you have to be extremely careful. A lot of people say that, but I want to grow my succulents large. I have seen the other person grow the succulents large, and the person said that they use XYZ fertilizer. Probably the fertilizer is working well in their environment. Imagine using a fertilizer that tends to generate a lot of heat, and you are from an environment wherein the temperatures rise above 40 degrees Celsius. Imagine the environment itself is so hot, and then you have a fertilizer that is generating so much of heat inside the soil. You know what's going to happen next. So you have to be extremely careful. Never ever compare your succulents with someone else. I do take inspiration from other succulent growers, especially on Pinterest. I tend to see how beautifully they grow the succulents, but I would never compare my succulents with them, because I know the environment that they are growing the succulents in is completely opposite of what environment I have. I cannot expect my succulents to look exactly the same how their succulent tends to look like. So there is something wherein you need to draw a line. So basically you need to understand all of these factors, where the person is growing the succulent, what is the environment of the succulent. Of course, you will not be able to grow succulents like this in another environment. Probably if you are from a very humid environment, or from an environment that is very hot and humid, probably you might not be able to grow majority of the varieties from this. So the things that can kill your succulent, as I said, one is overwatering, second is excess amount of fertilizers, third is you're not giving it enough light. Yes, if you're not going to give enough light to the succulent, it will start to stretch. Eventually, it will stretch to a part wherein it will start to drop all of its leaves. And remember guys, when a succulent starts to stretch, it will start to drop off all of its leaves, leaving only a handful of leaves on the crown area. And then it will be very difficult for the succulent to bounce back, because what's the most important thing for the succulent is its leaves. That's where it tends to store the water and nutrients. If there is less leaves on the succulent, how will the succulent survive? Next comes what I have always spoken about is the environment. Remember guys, you have to buy succulents that tend to match your environment. A lot of times people might see it on the tags that a particular succulent is okay to be grown in a particular zone. You might happen to see certain things like that. So always go according to what's being mentioned on the tags. If you are from a very humid and hot environment, the choices of succulents that you can grow will also minimize. If you are from a very dry and cooler environment, of course you can grow more varieties of succulents. So it all depends upon your environment and climate. For example, in my case, as you remember, I quit growing sempervivums because sempervivums are not meant to be grown in my environment. I tried a couple of times because I did not have much experience about succulents at that time. I thought probably I am lacking somewhere, and that's why the sempervivums are not growing very well. But over the period of time, I realized that they only tend to do well during the winter months, because that's when the environment is little colder. But the moment summers used to come, my sempervivums used to rot, or either used to have dry rot. Even if I used to water, they used to get rotted. If I keep them underwater, they used to get dry rot. And slowly I realized that sempervivums are not meant for my environment. They do not match in my environment, so I completely quit keeping them. So you need to understand what kind of environment you are in, what are the succulents that you can grow in. If you are from a coastal area, growing of varieties is going to be a little bit more difficult because they prefer a little dry and cooler environment. So you have to do a little bit of research. Just don't get succulents because you tend to see them, they are beautiful. It's not necessary that a beautiful looking succulent will stay beautiful with you if you're not giving it the right conditions. Again, coming back to watering, like this one, this is the Francisco Baldi, Graptosedum Francisco Baldi. I had done watering early morning at 7. By 10 a.m., the upper layer of soil was completely dry. Now it's around, I think it's almost 4:30 p.m. And now when I'm trying to check the soil, it's completely bone dry, and this is something in one day. So you can imagine how dry my environment is during summers. The same thing will not be applicable during the monsoon season or during the winters. It might take a little bit longer period of time, but you can see within couple of hours my soil is almost dry. Probably there would be a little bit of moisture at the base, but the upper almost 50% of the soil is completely bone dry. Now this will not be the same case for you if you are from a very different city, because your environment is going to be quite different. It's not necessary that your soil will also tend to dry the same way how my soil is drying. There are a couple of reasons behind that, because this succulent is kept in morning direct sunlight for 5 to 6 hours. It has a very gritty, loose, porous soil mix. The container that I'm using is a papercrete pot. There's a good amount of air circulation. It is in an outdoor condition, so you can see the soil tends to dry really fast. So there are a couple of factors that helps the soil dry faster. Now, maybe tomorrow or day after tomorrow, I will water it again. So as you can see, the frequency of watering is going to be a little bit more during summers. During monsoons and winters, it's going to be comparatively less. But right now, today I have watered it. It's almost 50% dry. probably tomorrow it will be almost 80% dry, and on the third day it's going to be 100% dry, I'm sure, because the papercrete pot is going to absorb all of the moisture. And that's the reason why I will be watering it probably on the third or on the fourth day. Now the same thing cannot apply to you. If you are going to do the same thing without checking the soil, if you are going to water, there is a high chance that your succulent will have a root rot or a stem rot. So you have to be extremely careful. I cannot tell you that you have to water your succulent once a week. I cannot tell you have to water your succulent every 3 days. It all depends upon your individual care. You have to individually check when your soil tends to dry. I'm very happy that there are some people that tend to note down when was the last time they watered, and then they tend to take care accordingly. This is something that I'm very happy to see. It is a very good practice, especially if you are a beginner. You can just jot it down or note it down somewhere. When was the last time you watered? You don't have to do this every now and then, but in the initial stage, this is going to help you and you will go very far with your collection. So guys, that's all about it. It's very simple. Please don't do things that are not required. If a succulent is meant not to have a very organic soil, do not make the soil very organic for them. You can see all of these succulents are doing absolutely fantastic. There is not even a single drop of fertilizer added to it. You can see how well they are growing. You might think, okay, but probably your succulents are not flowering. I will put up the images and the video clips. You can see my succulents tend to bloom. They tend to flower. The flowers tend to stay on them. They also tend to put out a lot of pups. You can again see over here a lot of pups growing on the stem area. Over here as well, this is my lemon lime variegated. You can see the colors are very beautiful. Again, there is a lot of new growth on the lower portion. You can see there is a pup coming up. So this is all very normal. It's not needed. I don't add even a single drop of fertilizer. If that was something that I used to add, I would have definitely made a video on it, that how well fertilizers tend to work. But I'm not using them. Even then, you can see my succulents are doing fantastic. So even if you do not add fertilizers, it's absolutely okay. You can see this is the perfect example in front of you. I can't give you a better example than this. I don't use any fertilizers. So guys, that's all about it. I hope that this video was helpful to you. If it was, please hit the like button. And if you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing to it. Until then, take care, stay safe, and keep propagating.